Tonight we watched Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. And I don't understand anything that happened in this movie. So Connor, what's the plot of Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 of 3, the DC Animated Universe finale?
Okay, so Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 expands like the first issue or two of Crisis on Infinite Earths to like a 90-minute movie, but adds in a bunch of shit at the start. So the Flash is seen like flashbacks of when he formed the Justice League and all that shit with the Justice League members. And he is the Flash of Earth 1 in this version. And in the original, and then it basically follows the original comic pretty similarly. So at one point he goes to Earth 3 and he meets the evil counterparts of himself and some of the other Justice Leaguers. And it turns out the multiverse is starting to be destroyed by the Anti-Monitor, who creates antimatter waves that destroy the multiverse. So the Monitor, who's the good guy equivalent of the Anti-Monitor.
He's like a pink guy.
He's a pink guy. He gathers a bunch of heroes from throughout the multiverse. So you got Earth 1, Justice League, and a couple other characters. You got Earth 2, which includes an older Superman, Wonder Woman, who's married to Superman after the death of Earth 2, Lois Lane.
Asian woman who can see all the light spectrum.
Yeah, Dr. Light from Earth 2, who's a girl.
The Katana woman from the Suicide Squad, the bad one.
Yep, you got a lot of characters, but you got like Earth 2 Superman. He's the primary character in Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis before he gets killed by Superboy Prime and becomes a zombie. But in the comics, you got Earth 1, which was the primary continuity after Earth 2 collapsed. But anyways, in this, the primary Tomorrowverse is Earth 1, and Earth 2 is just a series of older heroes that are advanced in time.
And there's
so you got Robin and Huntress, who are like, I don't know if they're, but you got Robin and Huntress is the daughter of Batman and Catwoman, etc., etc. And you got the evil world, which is Earth 3, and a bunch of other worlds, and they all team up, and the universes are starting to collapse in on themselves through the antimatter waves, and then the Supermans start building towers to try to defend the antimatter waves, but the antimatter waves come to Earth quicker than the Justice League has expected, and that's where it ends. So Aiden, what did you think of the first part of Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Okay. I'm like a comic book casual. I've read, I like Batman and Robin. That's by Grant Morrison. But the art style changes halfway through and I don't like it as much. And
the comics conundrum.
That's about it. I don't really get this movie. Flash, it shows the lives of Flash in multiple universes. There's the old Flash, who's old and loves his wife, and he's old. And that one is not the main one, but he's important at the end. And then there's the young Flash, who is founding the Justice League, and is the hobo that keeps giving him visions, is that another Flash? Or is that just some hobo?
I think it's
because I saw him and I'm like, oh, that's like Future Flash, but then Future Flash runs so fast to blow up the thing that he dies, and the robot dies, and some green guy comes and says, I'm God's friend and I'm gonna take you to heaven or something. I was like, oh, okay.
basically.
But I don't. The hobo may or may not have been the Flash. I don't know.
He could have been Constantine too. I haven't read Crisis.
They called him the forebearer or something like that. But like, it would make sense if he was the Flash, I think, but I don't know if he was. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The movie is a little all over the place, but I think all of the stories with the Flash are cute. The robot guy, there's a robot guy who's stealing all the heroes' powers, and he's being controlled by Lex Luthor, and eventually he's like, oh, this is kind of fucked up, I'm not going to do this anymore, and becomes good. I like that character. I don't remember his name. Osimo? Super...
Amazo?
Amazo, that's a bad name.
Amazo is a robot guy who is able... He basically can sense... He's basically DC's version of Taskmaster. I think Amazo came out first. And Ultron. He's Ultron and Taskmaster stuck together. The villain from Black Widow and Age of Ultron smashed together. So he can watch he can like absorb the hero's powers. So he has all the powers of the Justice League characters, but he's also like a super adaptable like AI robot. Yeah. So he's like a Terminator.
I liked the arc of
Terminator.
I liked the arc of Amazo. I don't know if he's in the original comic. I thought
that whole like starting area was made up, but I don't know if he appears, but Amazo's part was expanded, yes.
I like Amazo. I like Amazo's arc. I like most of the Flash stuff. I think the movie's a little disorienting because it hops around so much. Like, there's some differentiation in the art style between the periods. Not like heavy differentiation, but like Batman has a different suit in all the time periods, so I was able to keep up with where we were through that. And I thought all the concurrent Flash stories were pretty nice. I liked his wedding and him being old and the younger one forming the Justice League. It's a little all over the place, and once it got to the part where the pink guy takes them all to the thing, and then Supergirl turns into a purple grape monster and tells them about the future or whatever, I was kind of checked out. But I think like most of this movie works. I think like the overarching plot is kind of weird, but I think the concurrent Flash stories and the arc of Amazo are pretty cute. And I don't really know what to expect from the rest of this since it seemed to kind of end, but I assumed all the multiverses get crushed into one or something. This is definitely a third of a movie. It definitely feels like it's setting up for something else. But as far as it goes, I think this was a very decent first third that has gotten me interested in seeing more, and the Tomorrowverse art style is decent enough. There was definitely some cheap animation in there, but I think it looks good enough to tell the story that it's trying to tell in this one. I don't know. It's a decent start to this 3-part story, and I guess that's all you can ask for. I don't know what to expect. I don't know the original comics, so whatever comes after this is a mystery to me. But it's decently interesting and pretty well produced as far as these Tomorrowverse movies go, which are pretty hit and miss. I think that sums up everything for me, and Connor will probably have some things to say that I do not know about because I have not read this comic. So Connor, what did you think of the Time Crisis 4? Time
Crisis 4? You're on your way. Time Crisis 4 for Xbox 360? Infinite?
Time Infinite.
Time isn't a fact.
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Part 1.
Part 1 of 3.
I thought this was kind of a cool movie. Crisis on Infinite Earths is a incredibly convoluted storyline that really only pays off if you understand the preceding almost 50 years of DC lore at the time of publishing. You have to have not just a base knowledge, but a pretty solid knowledge. Because, like, I was, like, looking at characters in the background of this as you would look at the characters in the background of the main comic. Like, oh, there's Fire and Ice.
There's the Asian woman with the sword
Dr.
from
Light.
Suicide Squad,
There's
the bad one.
Katana. There's all sorts of random DC
Is her name
characters.
just Katana?
Yeah. Katana. She's part of Batman's Outlaws, which is when okay, so Doom Patrol came out and the X-Men ripped off the Doom Patrol, and then they're like, what if Batman had his own version of the X-Men? So DC counter ripped off the X-Men with the Doom Patrol. Not directly, but it's kind of the same vibe where they're like teenage outcast heroes type of thing. And Batman became Professor Xavier, basically. So X-Men's like a straight rip-off of Doom Patrol, and Outsiders, is kind of a rip-off of the X-Men, like when X-Men got rebooted by Chris Claremont. Kinda, yeah. I mean, I
saw the New Mutants movie. It wasn't good.
Sort of. You're sort of right. I wouldn't. New Mutants is just kind of a spin-off of X-Men that was kind of similar, but
I like when the hot alien bitch fought the bear.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
She looks like a hot alien,
yeah. Yeah, there's Anya Taylor-Joy. She looks like a hot alien. That's why people like her.
Yeah.
Anyways, Crisis on Infinite Earths, very convoluted, a lot of plot, and for Aiden, it's not going to get less confusing from here. The third movie, and probably a lot of the second movie, is essentially going to be just a really long fight sequence, because it's like three issues of really convoluted setup, followed by 9 issues of fight scenes.
So they fight the evil version of the pink guy?
Yeah, but he's like a giant, like, space demon. And so, no, not really. They don't look alike. They're not similar.
So he's called... So
he's like Galactus, but like multiverse Galactus. I have a question. And he's a big guy in a blue Iron Man suit, but he has like sharp, like shark teeth.
So he's named the Anti-Monitor.
Yes.
That implies the Monitor came first. And the Monitor is a pink guy with a robot arm.
I'll show you the Anti-Monitor. Just picture what you think the Anti-Monitor looks like. Put this on screen.
So
for people who don't know what the Anti-Monitor looks like, this is the Anti-Monitor. This is what he looks like. He's just a giant guy. But he's like in a weird suit, kinda.
Okay, but
he's like, you can see for scale, that's Superboy.
He's the Anti-Monitor. Which implies the Monitor came first. But what was the Monitor monitoring before the Anti-Monitor came about?
The multiverse.
Why is he...
I don't fucking it doesn't make sense, bro. But Marv Wolfman and George Perez wrote this epic story because they wrote the New Teen Titans together for years, and they pitched to DC. They said, okay,
the big robot.
We've been doing this for like 48 years. Can we like make like a really big storyline? And now this is a yearly thing for both Marvel and DC to make big storylines, but this is kind of the first one. So it pays off a lot of shit. And they're like, while we're at it, we're gonna do a soft reboot, because what they had to do is Justice League and Justice Society. People liked when the old geezers, the Greatest Generation, was teaming up with the Boomer superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would have to do is, because they were established in Flash 123 to be 2 separate Earths, they would have to transfer Earths every time. So they're like, what if we just combined all of our properties onto one Earth? So out of basically convenience for crossover purposes, they had to fold the multiverse in on itself and make it one Earth. So there's the pre-52 multiverse, and then there's 0 Hour where there's 52 Earths in the multiverse, but everybody's in one Earth, and then the other 51 Earths are dramatically different, but all of the characters are on New Earth. and then there's 51 other Earths.
like,
But then in Flashpoint, it got more confusing and more confusing and more confusing. This is the least confusing of the Crisis series.
I like
It takes homework to understand these.
In Arkham Knight, you get to fight Professor Pig. I like Professor Pig because he's simple.
Professor Pig.
He's a character that he's just a serial killer, and Batman has to be a detective to find and beat him.
And he's Dick Grayson's Joker, basically.
I like that in the comic. And
I also like the pink flamingo because he's the white version of Prince.
I like
except
the flamingo.
He's a serial killer.
The flamingo is just. The flamingo is he's Doflamingo from One Piece, but in Batman.
Yeah.
He's the same character. They even look the same. Look up Doflamingo. Look him up. Here's my phone.
I know what you're talking about. Because
you haven't read One Piece.
No, but I know what you're talking about because I read comics and people compare. But I've seen, let's see, the Flamingo. The Flamingo.
DOF. LA. It's one word.
The Flamingo.
He's the flamingo.
Yeah.
He's the same character.
I mean, they're just, the idea of a flamingo is they're kind of feisty creatures, but they're also very colorful. So I mean, it's an idea.
They put Doflamingo in Batman.
They did, yes, but unrelated to Doflamingo or Professor Pig or Arkham Knight. Is Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 animated movie. But it's cool. They did a lot of kind of padding to the start. Because, so this is coming to an end, the Tomorrowverse, which was the newest universe, and probably the most coherent from an art style standpoint and a story standpoint, and from an actor standpoint, because it wasn't just who can we get to play Batman this week, and then pick from the well of 6 or 7 people that played Batman. It was always the same people who consistently did everything, and, they kind of started it. It was fairly successful for these direct-to-animated movies, critically. Because it doesn't really matter commercially, because these are things they put on the Target rack. So that random people are okay, here's Batman. I don't know how much of Spider-Man. Here's Batman.
Direct to Max.
Yeah, but even before Max, I mean, these movies have been coming out a long time because they're fodder, and you can print them out every couple of years and put out a new one. You can print out
Justice League X Ruby.
Yeah, and you make them for $500,000 and stuff, and you put them out. So they've been making these since 2007's Death of Superman, which was the first adaptation of Death of Superman in animation, in animated movie form. They would later do it again, except a lot worse. But that was in the DC Animated Universe style, but wasn't considered part of the DC Animated Universe. Regardless.
And they made The Killing Joke.
They made a lot of shit. They made a lot of good stuff. But now with James Gunn's DCEU, it seems they will only be allowed to make the occasional Elseworld story. So my guess is we're going to get these 3 parts between now and fall. And then in late 2024 we're going to get Watchmen, as they said. And the DC Animated Universe cycle is going to become Elseworld stories and James Gunn DCU tie-ins.
Yeah.
According to the plan of the DCU and the fact that they're ending the Tomorrowverse seems warranted. But since this is the end of the DC animated direct-to-video cycle, a cycle that's been around for
the DC
18 years now.
VC.
Yeah, there's all sorts of anagram. I mean, there's a lot of different ones too because they've done 5 different universes. But it's been a consistent 4 movie a year cycle for almost 60 movies now,
including Justice League Cross Ruby.
So somehow they pitched to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers is here's $3 million, but you got to make 3 movies. So they expanded They did the first 2 issues of Crisis on Infinite Earths, basically the first act, and extended it backwards with a bunch of extra Flash stuff, putting Flash kind of as the square protagonist. which was actually a really smart move because if you read Flash, if you read Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the most famous parts of the story is when the main universe Barry Allen sacrifices himself to kind of help the cause to stop the Anti-Monitor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most impactful death. There's also Supergirl, but she was kind of an on and off character around this time. Wasn't as popular. Those are kind of the two primary deaths, though. But given the popularity of the Flash in modern day and stuff, it makes the most sense to kind of squarely put him as the protagonist. Because for a movie more than a comic, that the comic's supposed to pay off 45 years of shit. This is... We need to make a movie out of this, so what's most emotionally satisfying is if we have one character that's kind of the through line. So essentially what the start was, even though it was kind of slight, semi-pointless additions to the comics, it was mostly designed to squarely put Flash as the protagonist. So, Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, slightly not true. It's more like Crisis on Infinite Earths for half the movie, but the first half is a bunch of extra stuff to kind of contextualize the Flash and why he's the lead of this little trilogy we're about to watch. So, I thought there was a lot of good stuff to it. I mean, I've said a lot about the Tomorrowverse in the few Tomorrowverse videos we've done with like Supergirl and stuff, which is it's pretty hit or miss from a story standpoint, but the animation's solid.
Yeah, tying it into the weird Supergirl movie where she fucks Brainiac is weird, and I didn't realize that Supergirl was the grape Kool-Aid woman. I don't know why she's the grape Kool-Aid woman. I still don't get that, but
I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah, so Aiden, would you recommend Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a very nice Flash story, and I think what it's leading to is potentially interesting. It is a third of the story, so there's a good chance that it's better to wait. Like, all these animated movies just go to HBO Max anyway. So it's probably better to wait for it to actually finish rather than, like, going out and buying this right away. And just watching it on Max or something. But for what it's worth, I think the story that's centered around the Flash is relatively good.
Yeah.
And the movie is... It still ties together a satisfying ending, even though it's obviously a third of a larger story. And as far as it being like the first part of a send-off to this Tomorrowverse mess, it's a pretty decent movie. It's probably going to be on Max within like a week. If it's not already, it's probably just automatic.
It started on digital like 2 weeks ago. Came out on DVD today.
I guess, like, overall, I'd probably wait for parts 2 and 3 because it's going to be more satisfying to just watch this as, like, a big 6-hour movie.
6-hour movie, yeah.
But, as far as it goes, it's a relatively strong first part to this overarching trilogy, and I don't know enough about this stuff to have foresight as to where it's going, but there's a nice completeness to this first part with Flash's whole arc throughout his life and stuff. It's pretty strong. A lot of these DCU movies are pretty hit and miss or like very awkward, but this one is pretty decent. And yeah, so it's definitely a recommend, but maybe wait or maybe wait for parts 2 and 3. Anyway, Connor, would you recommend Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. But with a couple of notes with that. For one, Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comics, was very much designed as a thank you to the people who have dived into the lore of DC Comics up to 1986 when this comic originally came out. There are some modern references and stuff in this with newer characters appearing, like Mr. Terrific you can see in the background, for example, who I believe first appeared in like 2003 or 6. He's a Jeff Johns character. Back when Jeff Johns was good at writing comics before he became a fucking idiot.
Before he became the
Green Lantern. What if, okay guys, here's my big pitch. Green Lantern, but yellow.
Green Lantern,
but blue, motherfucker.
Green Lantern, but black.
I think Neil Adams came up with that. Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil came up with that one in the 70s, and his name is John Stewart.
I meant the zombie ones. But anyway.
Anyways, yes, I recommend it, but you do, I think it's actually a pretty solid standalone story. The filmmakers put a lot of work into making it something of a coherent story, even if you fall into it as a standalone, but you're gonna get more out of it understanding the lore, especially in the meeting scene with the Monitor, where there's like a million fucking superheroes.
I recognized the woman from Suicide Squad by David Ayer.
Yeah. But on top of that, I think it's kind of a cool culmination of almost coming up on 20 years history on DC animated direct-to-video films, which will be not coming to an end with James Gunn, but probably severely being changed to hard Elseworld adaptions and stuff that ties into the DCEU, or DCU, rather, because with James Gunn taking over, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of reshaping with the multimedia formats of DC, which is cool, but at that point everything's kind of coming together, and I think this is sort of the last hurrah of these like animated lore heavy DC films.
Yeah.
So it requires context. I think it's a thank you because, I mean, here's what it was designed for. 60% of these DC direct-to-DVD films are shit people randomly buy. When they're at Target, they're like, oh, the Justice League is going on a big battle.
$17 Justice League movie.
Yeah, or they buy it in the bargain bin for $4 before Target chucks it in a dumpster. Or they stumble on it on HBO. And the other 40% is devoted comic fans who are like, I want to watch this because I'm too lazy to read. And that's me. That's where I come in. And for a devoted comic fan who he doesn't find much time in his day to read comics anymore, these DC films, kind of a grab bag mixture of good and bad. You know, it was a good one, and I think
One Piece.
They tried really hard to simmer it down. They boiled down Crisis on Infinite Earths and expanded it to try to make even normies like this One Piece nerd over here understands Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is a way over convoluted storyline. So they kind of had their work cut out for themselves, and they did a good job. So overall, yeah, I recommend it. But especially to like DC fans and stuff, I think it's really well done. I think the Tomorrowverse pretty much did really good adaptions and had a lot of mediocre stories that were original.
I just realized.
So we'll see the other two parts. It could go to shit, but I kind of doubt it. It seems like it's a decent quality.